Good morning, everyone. I think the mic is on. Yes? Yeah. Perfect. Okay. So welcome to the Mission Not Impossible session. Today we'll talk about 5 key metrics to understand PMM success. And the metrics are basically what I have in my playbook. And so before I kick everything off, just a brief agenda for today. So I'll introduce myself and where I work. And then I'll dive into metrics that I have in my playbook, and hopefully you can take them away to your jobs. And we'll go into Q&A, and I ultimately want to hear from you as well, in case there are things that work for you that I can take back to my job. So since we're talking about success metrics, here is a little bit about myself and metrics that I measure in my career. So I've lived in Seattle for 30 years. My family and I immigrated to Seattle in the early 90s from Kyiv, Ukraine, but Seattle is my home, lived here ever since. I've been in marketing for 18 years. I've done all sorts of things, from managing emails to social media to coming up with promotions for e-com channels, display advertising. I mean, honestly, I think I've tried it all. The last 7 years I've spent in product marketing specifically, and I used cats in an image because I think that's what we do in product marketing, is we herd cats every single day. And I've worked at 6 different companies. Yes, one of them is Microsoft. But the most, I think, meaningful jobs that I've held have been in cybersecurity and fraud. And that's what led me to Okada, where I've spent the last year. And so a little bit about Okada, a shameless plug. So Okada empowers businesses to enable frictionless experiences and combat fraud. We're a global company. We were acquired by MasterCard a year ago, which is not bad at all for a brand. We are global. We have 4 offices worldwide in Seattle, Singapore, Amsterdam, and Budapest, and over 2,000 customers that use our solution. And a little bit about kind of like our bread and butter. It's called Okada Identity Engine. And what we do is we look at 5 identity elements, like consumer elements, such as name, email, phone, IP, and physical address. And we analyze it with our engine. And our engine consists of 2 mutually exclusive data sets. And to put it in, a real-world example, because it's extremely technical, but let's say I open up an account online and I'm required to enter my name and email address. And so identity graph part of our data set will be able to tell you that, yes, my email address is valid, and yes, it ties to me as the owner. So I'm considered a good customer. But the network part, which is our pattern-based and behavioral data asset, it'll be able to tell you that the email address that I used to open an account, I created, maybe 30 days ago, and I've used it across, 5 or 6 different e-commerce sites, and I've shipped it to 4 different addresses. So it would raise a red flag and say, maybe I'm not such a good consumer. And our customers use this data, and they build it into their rule sets and models and help them fight fraud on a daily basis. So, and we are hiring, by the way. So let's get to the core of the presentation. If you don't look like this every day, I'd like to know where you work. But I think as PMMs, we live in a data-driven world of decisions and results, and we're constantly trying to find different ways to measure what is it that we do. And I know it seems like a mission impossible, but if we really take a step back, it's really not. And 5 things that I take with me wherever I go in terms of measuring success and impressing your product teams, your sales teams, your boss, and even the CEO consist of product launch, looking at sales and revenue. Customer happiness and retention is extremely important. competition, you can't forget about that, and then looking at qualitative feedback. So to start, product launches are really the core of what we do. It's what enables us to drive demand and awareness and sale, but it's not as easy as we think, right? And we try to look at product launch as something that's ongoing forever, but it shouldn't be. Depending on what your product is, if you are in a SaaS industry, yes, looking at trials and demos is the way to go. Like, how many people are trialing your product? How many people are actively, taking a look at your demos? Where are they dropping off? How long are they interacting with your trial or a demo? Another thing to look at during your product launch is content, and your website and product pages are super important. Looking at traffic and views and how many resources people are downloading and what exactly they're downloading. And then last but not least is looking at product adoption. And one thing you can do is look at how many people you actually converted to a sale after they've trialed your product or they've demoed your product. And kind of like to summarize, one thing for product launches is you have to set a time frame, because you can't have an ongoing product launch that lasts a year, right? Or even 6 months, I think it's a long time. So like set a time frame and say, within 90 days, your goal is to increase feature X adoption or product X, usage by a certain percentage, and call it a day, and then just roll in the sales and activations into like your regular monthly business reviews or quarterly business reviews or however else you report on product metrics. Second metric that I keep in my playbook is looking at sales and revenue. And there are different ways that you can, really slice and dice it. As PMMs, look at product cycle, sales cycle. How many leads are converting into opportunities? What does the average sales cycle look like? Is there anything you can do, by working with teams to shorten that? And then are you meeting your targets that the team has set in the beginning of the year? Another one is revenue. I think we all, as PMMs, have revenue as our metric that we want to measure. But I try to look at not just how many new customers we bring in, but how many existing customers renew. What our upsells and cross-sells look like. Win rate, I think it's also very important. I think that's what determines the revenue. But don't just look at the overall win rate. Try to look at win rate by the way your sales team is split up, or by region or by vertical, because it can give you a lot of meaningful insights and help you, come up with unique programs and initiatives to run. And then last but not least is, and I don't think we do that a lot, but looking at cost per acquisition. I think that number can give you a lot of meaningful insights, because cost per acquisition can tell you really like how much are you spending, right? Like what are marketing people putting their efforts into? What is sales putting their efforts into? Even support. I think looking at cost per acquisition and then also what it takes to keep your customer can uncover a lot of insights for you. My third metric is customer happiness and retention. Clicker. There we go. Net Promoter Score. I think it's the only and the true measure that can tell you how happy your customer is with your product or service. And it really is just one question that you need to ask your customers. Like on a scale of 1 to 10, how likely you recommend product X or feature Y to a colleague? If you're not asking your customers this quarterly or even every 6 months, I think you're missing out, because that's the only way you know how happy your customer is with you. Another thing to look at is customer lifetime value and product usage. And I think we forget about this a lot, but it takes a lot more money to acquire a new customer than it is to keep one. And we spend all this money, we put in all this effort to acquire a customer, like we've done all the marketing, all the sales, they've adopted the product, great, now what? Like, this is your chance to really understand how they're using the product, how is it helping them, and optimizing that and innovating and making sure that they continue to stay with you year in, year after. And one thing that I like to say is it's really important for us as PMMs to work with our product management team to really understand what features to innovate on. So you can task your product manager to make a certain feature work better, and it will be your job to promote the heck out of it with the rest of the marketing team. But it is it's a partnership. Like, you're not supposed to do this alone. Moving on to competition. I know everybody loves competition. There's several things that I look at when it comes to competition. One of them is market share. First, it's really important to understand, like your company, what's your company's market share is in respect of the industry that you're in. Just because you could be really tiny, it doesn't mean that there's no opportunity for you to compete in the market. But as a company where you work, you need to decide, are you there to take over the competition and take over the market share, or are you going to just really penetrate the market that you're currently in? And there are different ways to, I think, increase market share. That doesn't have to include building new technologies, although I do have, you got to innovate. But yes, there are other ways to innovate that doesn't include building something new. Because if you think about company like Starbucks, for example, they're not in the technology business, but they innovate with their seasonality drinks, right? And their cups, and they're constantly doing something new to do something different in the market. When it comes to branding and marketing, that's another way to innovate. Reaching new and larger demographics, yes, it's harder to do it alone. But if you have a PR agency that you work with, they can definitely help you with that. And then don't forget to keep, your eyes out on your existing customers, because we have to make them happy. Another thing for competition is SEO. And you have to realize that your competition that you compete with a product every day is not necessarily your competitor in SEO. There could be completely different. And try to poke around, on Google and see who comes up on the first page, right? Just organically. But then also look at who comes up with paid. Because if you're searching or using a certain keyword and it comes up in the paid search, it's obviously a keyword that matters to your competition, and it's probably profitable for them. Try to use it in your organic when you do on-page optimizations. And you create content. Look at your metadata and title tags and headlines. There are ways to do SEO and keep on top of your competition that's not expensive at all. And then looking at social media. I know social media doesn't really, have any impact on SEO. I think we have lots of Google folks in the office. I could be convinced otherwise. But what does matter is what links are being shared on social media, because I think ultimately it builds, I'm spacing on the word, credibility in the research rankings. So definitely keep an eye out on what your competitors do on social media. It will not hurt you. And then battle cards. I don't know about you, but battle cards give me a heartburn every single time I have to either create them or edit them. But what I've learned is, battle cards should not be long essays, they're not white papers, like you're not writing a dissertation. And you shouldn't hide them anywhere. Don't put them on your OneDrive or Google Drive and expect your sales team to find it. What a battle card is, it should be short, concise, to the point. You should distill the information that you learn into easy to understand and remember points for the team. And make sure that your sales team can find it and repeat the message, and make sure that you train your team on how to use it. Some things that I think about when I create battle cards is identify, and I just realized I made a typo because I'm in the identity space, so everything is identity related, but it should say identify your stakeholders. Creating battle cards is not a solo effort. You really need to partner with your product team and your sales team, marketing, even your account services team, because each individual can bring a lot to the table. Like your product team obviously will know the ins and outs of the product or the feature. Your marketing team will be able to help you with what your competition is saying, because they're out there anyway, creating ads and emails. Your sales team talks to customers every day. They'll be able to give you feedback of what they're hearing from the market. And then account services team, they're the ones who know what your customers come back with in terms of issues that need to be addressed. All of that information can help you create a battle card. Another thing to do is include your company overview. This is where, like in the previous slide, I mentioned like knowing your company's market share. That can go here. Another thing is like you have to know who your customer is. Like it's really important to include your customer profile or buyer persona, and it's always more than one. Like there's a committee of people making a decision, so try to include multiple people that your sales team gets to talk to before they close the sale. And then competitor analysis, again, don't include just one or two. There's more than that out in the market. So don't forget that. And then success stories are super important. Like when your sales team gets ready to talk to a customer, they need to know hard facts. Like how much time are you gonna save them with your product, or how much faster are they going to do things? And last but not least, for the battle card is sales objections. Your sales team needs it, and they run into this every day, and this is where they can help you with your battle card in the first place. And I think one of the things that we as product marketers hear from sales is price. Price is like the biggest objection that we get, and I think if price is what your sales team brings to you and customer objects to, it means that they don't really understand the value that you're trying to bring. So that's the important piece, is to find ways to differentiate your product versus showing what it costs, because it's the value that you're trying to bring. And then last but not least, when I think of things to track, I choose qualitative feedback, and there's not really a metric that you can put on it, but your job or our job as PMMs is to have an open dialogue and to really listen authentically from our customers. And I think as PMMs, we have two customers, right? We have our internal teams, our sales, our support team, marketing, our product. Like listen to them, it'll help build innovative solutions. And then, voice of the customer. This is your chance to like get on the phone with them, or if you have advisory boards, or if you have a partner marketing program, like this is your way to get in front of your customer and really understand what they like, what they don't like. I think when you do reach out to a customer, it makes them feel valued, it makes them feel important, it makes them feel like they're part of the decision-making process. And then I mean, I put Steve Jobs' quote on there because I just really like it. And we as PMMs have to remember that we have to get closer than ever to our customers, so close that we have to tell them what they need before they realize it themselves. And that brings me to the end of my presentation. So thank you.
Got a few questions.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much for that. I think it's so important to talk about metrics and get the perspective on how to drill into some of those. I think we got some questions that kind of dig into that a little bit. I think the first one there, really, how do you separate the independent value, right, of what a PMM drove versus sales selling better or product shipping features? Since that's what might drive budget for your team. How do you really help differentiate that when you're measuring?
And I think it's really hard to do that because as PMMs, even though we're like, it's a solo job, right? It's not really. Like we have to work together with sales to understand what it is that we're gonna measure and help them get there. If we're trying to figure, like if they're getting lots of leads, right, but only a very small percentage of them is converting to opportunities, or they're converting to opportunities but they have a hard time closing them, it's like figuring out where we can help them in that cycle. And I think those individual pieces where we can help really contributes to like the overall
So
success.
Identifying those gaps and identifying those areas of optimization. Okay, cool. So. What do you do when questions are changing, sorry. Take that back. How do you calculate market share? How do you get reliable TAM data? There are services out there, but if you're a smaller company, you might not have the budget or resource. What's your recommendation?
So what I've done in the past, and I've worked for smaller companies that don't have budgets to pay for Gartner or Forrester, is you just Google. I've used markets and markets, honestly. And your PR agency. But I think just doing online research, putting different pieces together, looking at what your company does and how it relates to the overall market share, you can put a great story together.
Yeah. I think part of that also, I mean, if you agree, you're not always going to have 100%, right? Especially if you're a small company. It's so that idea of where your representative and where your competition sits is good to start with. It doesn't have to be 100% locked in and data driven. You might not have that. It's more of a signpost to where you think you are.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. What metrics do you think are incorrectly or overused in product marketing today?
Ooh.
Contentious topic.
Wow. I should ask whoever asked me that. It's like, what? That's a good one. A lot of them, honestly, are overused, in my opinion. It's just deciding what makes sense for the business. Because we can look at everything, right? We can look at the sales funnel, at how many leads we're bringing in, how many of them convert to MQL and SQL, but is that what is valuable for your sales? I don't know. Like it really depends on the organization.
Very bespoke to the organization, yeah. Okay. Once you know, this is a price question, and so once you know the price is an objection, how do you tease out the underlying issue so you can actually handle the customer not seeing value pushback?
What I've done in the past is worked with sales to understand what other things they're curious about. Like, is it really the price, or is it a certain feature? Or is it because they just don't have the budget or resources today? And really knowing who you're competing against. Because if it's really the price, like if you're really overpriced compared to other products, but then looking at what you're actually offering. Because the company where I worked at before, WatchGuard Technologies, we were in cybersecurity space, and the product that I focused on was Wi-Fi security. And so we competed with a lot, like Palo Alto, was one of them. But there was Meraki, who was a lot bigger. And we went head to head with Meraki all the time. And we were expensive, but I always try to use like coffee and Starbucks as an example, right?
Yeah.
Their coffee might be a little bit more expensive, but you're getting like the value for it.
That's a great point. That value exchange, right? So unless price is the ultimate arbiter.
And usually it's not.
Yeah.
Like people say price is, but it really isn't.
Yeah, fair. Keep pushing.
Yeah, keep pushing.
What do you do, and I think this is, all of us have worked in small companies kind of felt this in the past.
Yeah.
What do you do when you work at a startup that doesn't feel the product is ready? It's only internal facing, maybe only available for current customers. How do you measure to prove otherwise?
I mean, I would hope that you can do a beta program
Okay.
or take it to market, as an MVP with an opportunity to launch something bigger and better. But I found that launching it as a beta at smaller companies is better because you can get direct feedback. You can see how customers are using the product, what they like, what they don't like. And customers would love giving that feedback to you because, I mentioned in my slides earlier, like they want to be heard. They want to feel valued. They want to feel like they're helping you kind of like fly that ship while you're building it.
Cool.
So.
Yeah. One last question.
Yeah.
So how do you see product marketers working with or collaborating with customer experience teams along with sales? So you mentioned sort of that account experience, account success teams. How do you see them working together in your experience?
Yeah. Great question. I don't know if my boss actually asked that. So I work with our account services team and sales team all the time, and I run what we call product operations teams, which is part of the pragmatic framework. And so I run weekly meetings where we get all together and we actually put a charter together of what problem we're trying to solve. And it doesn't have to be for the whole year, it could be for a month or a quarter. And so we decide, are we going to improve customer adoption? That's gonna be our goal for the quarter. So we work together, just so everybody's opinion, value is important and everybody's voice is heard. And then we do readouts to executive team. And so it's always us as a team versus just me as a product marketer making the decisions. Because at the end of the day, it's not just us.
Yeah.
It's everyone.
No, I think that's a great point too. And we have a panel a little later this afternoon talking about collaboration and really how to drive impact and value exchange across the organization. So
yeah.
I really like that. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.